Hello, welcome to Words in Season Diary. My name is Deborah, and today I'll be sharing the very first episode of Words in Season Diary. I'll be talking about lessons learned from the Bible character Eve. So, just in case you haven't checked out the story I wrote about Eve, which I shared in my previous post, you can go through it after this video or visit any of my social handles in the description to read it. Today I'll be sharing the lessons I learned based on that story. And so let's go right into the video. So lesson one, Eve was created because there was a need. God had created the light, He had created the stars, He had created the animals, and man, Adam, and saw that all was good. But suddenly, for the first time, the Bible tells us that something was not good, and that was the fact that Adam was alone. you know everything else God made wasn't a good fit to be his companion. So God decided to find a solution, something to spice things up, to add color, to bring companionship, and to help in the fulfillment of his purpose. And so the woman Eve was created. Eve represents every woman out there, and I really want you to feel the special moment and take your flowers, because we are truly special, the special piece of God's creation, the last one of God's creation. We were created because there was a need for us, a need to help to fulfill God's purpose for mankind. So you are not just random, you are created for a purpose, okay? That's why I don't see the need for the competition we often see these days between men and women. We see women trying to become a man, or a man trying to become a woman. And honestly, all these are just deception of the enemy, meant to distract us from who we're truly created to be. And there's this popular saying that what a man can do, the woman can do better. But really, the woman was created to do what the man cannot do, or what the man cannot do alone. So why compete when each was created to complement each other and to partner together in the establishment of God's kingdom on earth? Why? And lesson two from the story of Eve, I also learned that as a woman, you are not ordinary. You are a threat to Satan and the kingdom of darkness. Before the woman was created, everything was going smoothly. Adam was naming the animals, interacting with God, and everything seemed fine. We never heard of the enemy showing up until Eve came into the picture. Then all hell broke loose. Satan suddenly realized that there was trouble. He discovered that another being had come to complement the man, and that through their companionship, God's agenda to reveal himself and his nature to creation would advance. So the enemy started strategizing to interrupt that plan. Before I move to the next point, I want to mention something we often hear. There's this saying that women are emotional beings. It said that women are moved by what they hear, while the men are moved by what they see. And truly, when Eve was presented to Adam, the moment he beheld her, he seemed to know exactly how to speak to her heart. He said, "This is now the bone of my bones and the flesh of my flesh." And then I can imagine how hard you must have been blushing. And then again, when the enemy came to her in the form of a serpent, he used the same tactic, enticing words. He told her, "You will not surely die, you will be like God." Because Eve wasn't aware that she was already created to reflect God, she fell for that trap. So as we discerning about the things we listen to, not every enticing word is good, and not every sweet word comes from God. Sometimes those words are seed the enemy planned to steal something valuable from you. Okay, so we must learn to be discerning. And then lesson 3 or 4, because discernment deserves its own points. As a woman, we must learn to be discreet with information, our personal details, our dreams, the vision God gives to us. Not everyone needs to know everything about us. When the enemy came to Eve, it wasn't as if he knew much. No, Eve gave him the information. He simply asked, "Did God really say you must not eat from any of the tree in the garden?" And she replied, "No, God only said we shouldn't eat from the one in the middle." The enemy took that information and used it as a fertile ground to sow deception in her life. Sometimes oversharing can open the door to confusion or attack. And then the fifth lesson is the importance of knowing your identity and your purpose in God. What has God created you for? Who are you? What is your identity? When God created man, He said, "Let us make man in our image and likeness." So when man was created to mirror God, to, to model God, man was created to mirror God, to model God, because God is invisible. He made man to be visible expression of Him. When God finished creating man, He rested, knowing He had created someone who carried the potential to create as well, to reproduce, to invent, to bring forth life and ideas. But Eve didn't realize the potential she carried. She didn't know her identity, and so she could easily be deceived by the enemy. In the same way, so many of us today don't realize what God has created us to be or what He has called us to do. We try to be everywhere, do everything, and become everyone. Anyone can convince us to chase something that isn't even ours. When there's a lack of identity or a sense of purpose, we can be easily tossed around or deceived. That's why we need to go back to God and ask Him to reveal who He created us to be and help us to discover our purpose. And lastly is the lesson of obedience. Just like Eve, there are many times God warns us to stay away from certain things that seem right or even enticing. We tell ourselves everyone else is doing it and we don't want to be left out. Even when we feel that conviction in our hearts not to do it. So, not everything that feels good is right. Not everything that looks or sounds appealing is from God. We must learn to depend on God and walk in obedience at all times. And so, with that, we've come to the end of today's episode, and I hope it really blessed you. Thank you so much for hanging on till the end. Please don't forget to like, don't forget to share, subscribe, and stay tuned for more inspiring episodes. And remain blessed. And I'd also like to know in the comment section what really stood out to you in today's video, and you could also tell me what you've learned before now from the story of Eve. Thank you so much.